Welcome to the Debrief. I'm here with the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. Bob, welcome.
Hey, Robby.
Exciting couple days ahead of us. We're heading into the final stretch before the election.
It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
It always is.
We're finally here.
Every time. Well, let's hop right in. So first of all, Blake Masters' chances of toppling Senator Mark Kelly in Arizona got a boost this week, Masters being the Republican challenger, but the Libertarian candidate, the third-party candidate in the race, Mark Victor, dropped out and actually threw his support behind the GOP nominee. And so we actually had an interview with Libertarian Party Chair Angela McArdle today, so viewers can check that out as well. But this is interesting. Blake Masters seems to have gone after, I don't think he does not describe himself as a libertarian personally.
Right.
Maybe was formerly a libertarian, but has been making some inroads there. And, it's a pretty close race, and that could make some difference.
I think it could. I mean, these third parties in close races play a key role, and obviously the Libertarian is not close to the Democratic Party. So I watched some of this debate, and I thought this Libertarian candidate did pretty well. So I think this does carry some weight. I'm surprised we're still talking about Arizona. I thought Kelly would have wrapped this up by now, but really, you look at the numbers, Biden's numbers in Arizona, they're not strong, and that's why this race is so competitive. Kelly's a good candidate, but Biden is the reason.
Kelly is a good candidate, and Arizona is a kind of newly minted blue state, if it's a blue state at all, obviously. In the gubernatorial contest, though, Kari Lake, who I think many people would have expected to be the more flawed candidate, history of kind of very leaning into the MAGA line on election stuff, which maybe helps you in a primary, but the theory is hurts you then in a general. But she's running even further ahead of her Democratic challenger. So she's more ahead than, whereas Masters and Kelly are pretty close, with Kelly a little bit ahead.
Yeah, and this shows that this state is still very much a battleground, and the fact that Lake, a lot of people don't vote on policy, they vote on personality, and I think that's helped her. She has said some controversial things, but again, I think a lot of people in Arizona are going to go to the polls thinking, I'm voting against Joe Biden.
There's a Libertarian candidate as well in the Pennsylvania race and in the Georgia race. It could also make a difference there, especially in Georgia, where if you keep the candidates, even the winning candidate, if they're kept under the 50% threshold, runoff.
Yeah, I think we're headed for a runoff because of that reason. I think it's going to be very hard for either the two main candidates, Warnock and Walker, to hit the 50 threshold. So I think this is going to go to overtime. And of course, if you look at these states, it's New Mexico, it's Pennsylvania, and it's Georgia. If you win two of those three states, you're going to get the majority. You might win 3 out of 3. But I think that we may not know until December who's going to be running the Senate in 2023.
Oh, wow, but we want to know now.
I know.
We want to know now, Bob.
Exactly.
All right, well, the GOP is already preparing for what they might do if they do, in fact, win the majority. And there's been a big focus on COVID and Dr. Fauci. Hearings in our future if the GOP takes over?
A lot of hearings on COVID and the origins of COVID as well, which is not going to sit well with China. We're also going to see oversight on immigration, the border, should the House and maybe the Senate flip. And of course, Fauci's, I'm not surprised he's retiring. He didn't want to deal with a majority constantly going after him, and also constantly going after, there's legislation to cut his pay. So I think it was a wise move for him to retire. Now, I know he says not retire, he's going to move on to other things, but he's not going to be.
He's going to write books, give speeches, etc., make a little bit of money.
Serve on some boards,
Yeah, I think the other major policy issue where you could see a huge difference between Democratic governance and Republican governance is funding for Ukraine.
Yes, exactly. And that's another thing they're going to be, I think, doing more oversight on, and the really chaotic, disastrous, deadly withdrawal of Afghanistan. That is a big issue for Congressman Mike McCall, who would be chairman should the House flip.
Interesting. Well, there's also a push for more security for lawmakers following this brutal attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. I think all of us were kind of surprised that it was, there was some confusion and then some conspiracy about what actually happened, because people couldn't believe that someone, a seemingly mentally ill homeless person with a hammer, was able to so easily break into the personal residence of the third most powerful political figure in the country. But it seems like that is what happened, and what does that say about the security for our lawmakers?
It surprised me that there's no security there as well. Now, obviously, the speaker gets security round the clock, but she wasn't home. This has rattled the Capitol Hill community. I mean, this is something that's obviously got spouses on edge. I do think that in this supplemental, this budget bill that we're going to see in the lame duck, I think you're going to see more money. And remember, the Federal Election Commission has also allowed money for protection. You can use your campaign funds for security. I think more members need to do that, because we're in a volatile time. And listen, you think about it. We have the election. We have maybe a Trump indictment. We're headed for some volatile times. I mean, fasten your seatbelts, and hopefully it doesn't become violent.
We've had Supreme Court justices, their houses here in D.C., visited by irate people. Of course, people have the right to protest on the street, et cetera, and don't have the right to.
No, and this is not a Democratic or Republican thing.
Yeah.
I mean, both sides are being targeted here. We've seen that over the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
And it's very startling.
Yeah, it is alarming, because there are a lot of political figures, too. There's a lot of, it's not just Nancy Pelosi's way up there in the chain, but then you have all the members of House and Senate, and you have cabinet heads, and you have judges, and you have et cetera.
And I think they have to boost the security around not the leadership officials, but the rank and file members. I mean, these are 535 of them. Some of them I know don't want protection, but after this attack, I think some will say, yes, I will take some protection.
Yeah, I think so too. Scary stuff. Well, don't forget, our parent company, Nexstar, is going to have live election coverage of the 2022 midterms. November 8th, News Nation will be broadcasting live starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're partnering with Decision Desk HQ to call the big races, and they'll also have journalists from around the country, including from us here at The Hill. And of course, we'll have post-election coverage for you here on Rising. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here, Bob.
Thanks, Robby.
See you next time.